Hello and welcome back. Episode 3 of the Breaking the Ice podcast. I am one of your hosts, Elliott Draga, joined by my co-host this week, Lloyd Overton. Lloyd, how you doing?
Good, guys. How are you?
Yeah. Doing pretty well. For the first time ever this week, we have a guest. So I would like to welcome Casper Søgaard-Petersen. Casper, how are you doing?
I'm all right. Thank you. And thanks for having me.
Yeah, that's great. Casper, do you want to do a bit of an introduction for everyone?
Yeah, sure. I can do that. So you mentioned my name. My role is, first of all, I'm working with Ice Tech, where I am the Chief Product Officer. I have a fairly long background in the insurance industry, at least the tech side, coming up 15 years now. Started out with Nordic Insurance Software, 15 years ago, and progressed slowly through the organization. Ended up being the CEO of that organization before we merged with InsurTech earlier this year. That's the really short version of the journey that I've been on. Worked with a ton of different clients out there, a ton of different partners, and seen a lot of different things.
Yeah. So we are, what Casper's not giving the full background. I think I was probably about employee number 10 at Nordic Insurance Software. And I think you were number 9 or number 8, depending on who walked through the office door first between you and Sammy. But you and I have been colleagues for a very long time. 15 years is an eternity these days. So it's great to have you on the podcast. We're going to talk about IPMI today, International Private Medical Insurance. So wanted to get you on, wanted to talk about the platform. But before we do, naturally, we have to talk about the World Cup because it's still on. Casper, you're in Denmark. You and I can air our grievances, my Italy, your Denmark, but we have our English compatriot here. So we're all going for England today, right? That's the talk track. I'm sorry, I'm just reading my notes that I've been instructed to say here. Yeah.
I'm not going to play the Baddiel and Skinner song just yet, but we might well hear it. We might well hear it at some point during one of these podcasts if we can get to the next stage. I mean, you know what? I've never watched an England game where I haven't chewed off my fingernails, but I think I'm starting to chew off parts of my fingers as well. I mean, it's just every single one of them is like, it's just like slitting your wrists at the point where you're like, come on, guys, you've got the scruff of the neck of this, and you're sort of stepping back and not doing the right things. But, they've scraped their way through. They're in another game. Yeah,
you're not making it easy on yourselves, that's for sure. I have to say, I've enjoyed, obviously the games have been in North America, so there's been a lot of late games. I've had absolutely terrible timing and have had meetings during yesterday's semifinal, again during today's semifinal, and then I'm on a flight on Sunday during the final. So, I got to watch a fair bit of it in the early stages, I got to watch Cabo Verde and some other countries, but when it really counts, I'm not going to get to watch any of it. So, but I will be voting or cheering your side on.
So you watched the second division of the World Cup, and now you're seeing the Premiership of the World Cup. That's probably the best way to describe it. But I mean, Norway, I've got to give them their due. They were great in defeat. They were very kind. It was nice to see the camaraderie between the players. They played a great game. They nearly got it done. There were a few kind of dubious decisions on both sides of the fence, I think. Last night's was good, though, to be fair. I mean, I was kind of saying, look, France are going to just breeze through into the next round. Spain done the business. France just couldn't chop them. They could not break them down. So, they moved the ball really well, as the Spanish do. So, yeah, we'll see. Yeah. We'll see. We just got to shut Messi down.
Let's pivot off this. So I don't want to lose Casper. He's about to hang up because Denmark's not in it. So, okay, Casper. So I guess, before we get into the IPMI stuff, let's just talk through our history a little bit more. Because I think, I think it would enlighten people to hear a little bit more about the history of NIS and how we made this pivot from really focusing heavily on travel insurance and travel assistance into IPMI. So, do you want to just give a little bit more of a background about NIS and the platform on that half of the business?
Sure. I can do that. without going into like all the historic milestones that we've gone through. So it started in the middle of the 90s. That's when NIS was founded, and we started out with a claims platform, claims and assistance platform, for a single customer. And it's evolved from there. Also started out with a good idea and then started getting traction, and getting more customers on board and expanding the product from there on. So as the platform started out, it was claims and assistance as mentioned, but soon after we had policy administration added, on a single database, single API, structure. So gaining the knowledge from both sides when considering feature improvements on either side. So when we do something on, when we did and when we do something on the policy side, we will automatically have the claims and assistance perspective thought into that feature, because it's end to end, and as I mentioned, it's working off of the same API. Early on, the structure and decision making has been to build an application, to build a platform where the users and the customers would be very much in control of their own configuration and how they would like things to function. So although it's a core platform, it is implemented in many different ways, mostly via configuration. So that will be how you design your workflows, what your SLAs would be, how your products are structured, your documentation outgoing, and how your digital sites, all of that is configured and built. And that's where we found a good place to, it's a camp. Say this is what we do. We have a strong core. We maintain the core, and we are focused on having a strong core that is stable and works and comes with the capabilities that any customer would require. And having the capabilities of then building on top if you need to, and personalizing the experience for, first of all, the end users, which are the agents and the claims handlers and so on. But having the capabilities of making sure that the information can pass on from the insured into the back end or back office side of things to get processed the right way. So started out heavily on travel. The next step was made into expatriate.
Before we get there, we'll we'll just slice this into some, I think, key milestones, right? Because the business was started in the 90s. Casper and I were not there when it was started. We were in diapers at that point in time, or maybe maybe just a little bit older than that. So the business went through an evolution from when it was founded to when we eventually joined. I like to say, the sort of 20, 25-year-old software businesses are kind of like cats. They've lived 9 lives. I mean, to have made it that long, you've survived. I mean, we've survived the transition from physical infrastructure to cloud infrastructure. We've survived, business disruption events. The first one I think that I remember was the big ash cloud from Iceland. That was a heavy travel disruption event and predated the big one. The big travel disruption event that we all lived through. And I think, I've always seen that as being our significant inroad into IPMI. So maybe, I'd be curious, I'll weigh in on my experience living through that. But Casper, I'd be curious to see, how did you feel on the product side? Because when that happened, you had already moved into the product and platform role within the organization, right? So, how were you seeing it? All of a sudden, the travel world's entirely disrupted. Our core market is travel. What happens next?
Yeah, so that was some interesting periods, and I'm sure we'll unfortunately get more of those as time goes by. So how we felt it on our own organization was sort of like in a delayed fashion. So the first ones that were affected by this was our customers that started to, to be honest, scramble and figure out what do we do about this situation. And it came clear to us fairly quickly that in order for everyone to get through this, I'm talking mostly about the COVID situation. Yes, cloud was a couple of weeks, right? COVID was a much worse situation, and what we realized early on was that we really need to focus on the partnership perspective of our agreements with the customers, because if someone is going belly up because of this, is not in our interest, is nobody's interest, essentially. So management at that point in time was clear in that messaging, and we made we did what we possibly could to make sure that people were able to stay in business and help them go through. It did give us time to repurpose our resources on our side. So during that period, we didn't have any layoffs, but we took the opportunity of starting to build a brand new foundation of the next generation of the platform, which we refer to as the Nordic platform. So we naturally got into a period where not a lot of work came through the customers, because the appetite simply wasn't there. You don't know what's going on in the travel market, and the time was invested into a new product, which is actually still the foundation that we're building our next line of products on. So I guess there's good things and bad things in such a situation, because you get a chance to revisit priorities and things that is important, but never quite have gotten the attention that you wanted it to get. Actually got a chance to get that, where we took out, I don't think it would be lying if I say it was over 50% of the engineering capacity that we had at that point in time was put on the Nordic project to have that built from the bottom up. And I was overseeing that. It was a fun, chaotic, and difficult, and well, a lot of different words period where we need to figure out, well, how's the UI going to look? UI is one thing. How's the UX? Start to talk to some of the customers and see how they would like it to function. Also, I've been in the company at that point in time for I guess must have been 8 years. So I had some things I would like to change, where I thought the process could be smarter. So that was an opportunity to revisit everything, which is, well, interesting.
Yeah. But again, Lloyd, just to paint the picture, I mean, we were, it was a bit of an existential moment for us, right? Your entire core market craters out for an indefinite amount of time. And, I think through a combination of serendipity and ingenuity, we started to, expand our target market. We started to expand our target base, and some of the unique nuances of the travel market that were embedded into our platform that have made us a resilient travel platform. Things like supporting, a multi-language interface, things like supporting, multiple currencies throughout the entire policy and payment and claim, life cycle. Those were necessary components within the IPMI space, but there was a lot that we didn't have. And so, when Casper's painting the picture of refactoring an entire application, we're also now layering in the complexity of now expanding a function set to meet this new market that we were going after. Casper, I'm curious to know from your perspective, what do you think, was an early asset for us in making this transition, and what were some of the biggest gaps? And particularly, I mean, was it more on the policy side or more on the claims side?
Do you mean in stepping into the IPMI scene, or in general moving into a new platform?
No. Specifically, I mean, focusing on IPMI.
Well, I think if we start from the policy side of things, I think most of the capabilities that we need to have, or functionality, was already baked in from policy side, compared to like our core offerings at that point in time. The main differences that we saw when stepping into these kind of policies was in the limitations area. So having different types of limitations, and that was a fairly small extension that we needed to do to the limitation engine that was built in. So it was, we had a good starting point on the policy side with something that's flexible as travel insurance, and then being able to extend it with the new restrictions or limitations that we needed. On the claim side, claims and assistance side, the travel assistance part was a huge stepping stone for us, where our mindset has always been around the medical side of any claim. The claim is just the end product, just air quotes, the end product of something that is funneled through the assistance side. That's how you used to view it back then, because assistance was the main thing that we did, and handling the financial side and the financial consequences of a case was a downstream activity. So I do think that perspective on our application and how we viewed things back then gave us a good head start in stepping into the IPMI scene. And then the way that we really carried it out was to partner with some customers that want to be in this area, to get their experience and how they view the market, what kind of capabilities they would like to have available to them when they go live, or when they expand their portfolio of product lines that they have. So some of it was stepping on the good things that we've already built in. Some of it was own thinking, and some of it was, or a huge part of it was to talk to the market and to see what are you looking for, what are the kind of extensions that we need to do. But in all honesty, it wasn't a lot of extensions that we needed to do from the get-go. There's been incremental changes to the application as we've gone through the years, and the requirements has also changed. We see that when we step into new geographical markets, that are different components, different requirements to something like the invoice. The invoice is a big thing. Everybody knows this. That's worked with, well, both travel, medical, and any insurance product, and the medical side. Those bills can be really big, and being able to capture all of those details has always been extremely important to us. Some of it is detail that is actively used on the case to do assessments and to validate whether you're on cover or not. And some of it is saved as metadata, because this is the data that we received when we originally got the invoice. And that data can become valuable at some point. It's just not something that is being utilized directly in how invoices were processed back then, at least.
Yeah, I mean, my take on it, to give sort of a one-liner, is I feel like the transition on policy was to add more complexity and more flexibility, and then the transition on claims was to add more efficiency and streamline things more, right? Because you're talking about a lot. I mean, on the policy side, there's a lot more dynamism to those products. Things are much more a la carte, catered toward large corporates, large contracts, as opposed to being a much more transactional. I mean, Lloyd, you know this from the UK travel market. You can buy a travel policy at the grocery store, right? It's commoditized, right?
Well, I was going to say, actually, I mean, I'm a personal lines guy by definition. That's kind of my background in insurance. But my wife, who sits in the opposite room to me and also works from home on a regular basis, has been in private medical insurance for 25 years. In fact, it was weird that I was working on the ICE platform at one point, and she was a user of the Actress platform, working for Marsh, which are a huge global broker that specialise in private medical insurance, not IPMI. But, you know, as you can imagine, our conversations are so riveting, talking about private medical insurance and personal lines insurance. Thankfully, it does go beyond that. But you know, it's interesting to hear, you know, you guys talking about actually exactly what insurance does to everybody, right? You know, a terrible thing happens, an insurance company responds to it, and they provide a cover that can then in the future hopefully put people in a better position when that sort of thing arises again. You guys were actually slightly different to that in terms of something really bad happens. So, hey, we've got to come up with a system that handles something completely different to what we're doing today. So to hear the way that you pivoted to survive, arguably, was quite interesting for me to hear. I guess one of the things I was going to ask is, you know, did COVID actually kind of, you know, off the back of that, did it change the way IPMI was sold or administered, or were there any other considerations that, you know, you guys learned? Because, I mean, you were doing that on the fly while going through that kind of tragic situation.
Yeah, I mean, like, Casper, I'll jump in here first, which is to say that there were a lot of expats that were stranded overseas, right? So you might be, like, an IPMI policy might be to cover a secondment on a temporary basis, but now you're domiciled there. And so I think, underwriters and benefits administrators had to take a different look at the rules that govern the policies just on the basis of what was happening in the world. So, from a travel side, obviously there was absolute chaos in terms of, trip cancellation, trip delay claims, people being stranded, needing to get home. What was what was covered, what wasn't covered. There was a bit of a knock-on effect within IPMI where, because there was so much uncertainty hanging over, and then because countries started to enforce different types of rules in terms of entry and exit, I think that put a lot of strain on the capacity in those markets, right? Casper, I don't know if you have anything else there.
No, I think what you mentioned there is sort of like a different take on it. Was we became, as a company, aware of the vulnerability that we had serving only one market, and we needed to diversify, like many others that was hit in that situation. And then you start to go through an analysis: where is our product relevant? Where could it be relevant with a number of investments? And that's how we pivoted into this area more seriously, because it were close to what we were doing as core capabilities.
Lloyd, I would be remiss and would probably get a talking to also if I didn't take the opportunity to plug the IPMI Global article that we were just featured in, because I think what started at that point in time and what's pervaded over the past 5 years was just this constant evolution in terms of digital transformation. And every different line of insurance has gone through its own journey of digital transformation. I think that was really sped up for a lot of different lines. I don't know, I'd be curious from a personal line standpoint, what the experience was during COVID or how much was digitalized pre-COVID versus post-COVID. But I think within the travel space, within the IPMI space, that was a key inciting incident in forcing companies to really start to digitize what they were doing from customer interaction, but then also from a back office standpoint. They had capacity now, right? All of a sudden, companies had capacity to invest in these type of projects.
I would completely agree with that. I mean, there's been a talk of digitizing and transforming and those kind of conversations for years. I mean, I worked in the Lloyd's market for a number of years. They were doing Blueprint 2 for God knows how long, probably Blueprint 22 by the time they canned it. It's trying to kind of evolve is difficult unless you're given almost a problem where you need to. And actually, when you looked at what COVID did, I mean, me from a kind of sales guy perspective was sitting there thinking, God, like sales is a personal thing, right? It's, you can do some of this over the phone, but you want to be, sat next to someone, when the going gets tough or you're getting into the weeds, because you just build that relationship. And this industry is very much a relationships-based industry. But, we couldn't do that. So we had to start making sure we went through these entire sales processes digitally, which was interesting. And we successfully did that with a big win from an ICE perspective, just as we went into COVID. But then I think, to your point around insurance, insurance historically, certainly in personal lines, was a lot of call centers and a lot of people sat on phones. And you couldn't be crammed into call center rooms with lots of people. You had to go and kind of do that back at home. So, being able to kind of spin that up quite quickly was difficult for a lot of insurers because they just didn't have that capability in place. And actually, once they'd done it, it was then right. Okay, in the example I gave earlier, how do we evolve moving forward? Right. Well, we need to do more of this online. We need customers to be doing more of it, rely on less conversations with advisors, and make sure that when they are having those conversations, it's for the really important things. And I think, the other big win off the back of it from a kind of system perspective for ICE was, as you know, Elliott, we go through due diligence questionnaires, we go through RFPs and RFIs all the time. So actually, what's better to kind of give an example of your disaster recovery process than having been through one and showing that you've gone through it successfully and survived it? It's easy for us to say we've got all these processes in place on a bit of paper, but actually that's probably the best BCP and disaster recovery kind of scenario we've ever been through.
Yeah, absolutely. Casper, taking it back into the sort of IPMI space, where we are today, what comes next in your mind, from a market standpoint, and then from a platform standpoint?
Well, that's that's a big one, Elliot.
Okay, start with the platform. Or I can tell you what I think. I can tell you what I think from a market. Yeah. Okay.
Well,
okay.
let me go first, and you can see if you agree, and we'll have a long session on this. So from a platform perspective, what we know that we need to do is we need to have an open API where we can allow to have the process enriched by specialized third parties. So we're really, as I mentioned earlier on, really conscious about the fact we want a strong core, we want the core to be as bug free as something could be, and to grasp the core functionality that one would expect to be in the platform. And that sort of like grasping is evolving over time. It's becoming bigger and bigger. That's a natural thing, right? We can do more and more. New features come in. We release 6 times a year. New features. But there will be situations where someone has an excellent idea, an excellent set of data, an excellent something where we would simply be lacking behind for too many years. And why not offer that to our existing customer base via a partnership and a seamless integration to get those capabilities into the platform. For the end user of the application, they shouldn't really care where the functionality is being delivered from. They should care about getting the support that they need. We see a lot of agentic features coming into the market every day, and we're trying to figure out which are the ones to bet on to get into the application, which are the ones that we want to deliver ourselves. And to have that library of things you could be able to plug into the process to make sure that you work as streamlined as possible. That is something that's really interesting to follow. I also think that we'll see a lot of updates to the regulations around AI moving forward. So that's something to keep an eye on, and to be aware that we're in the early days, on this, and we simply don't know where we are going. And it's a matter of keeping your eyes open and selecting the right things to put into the application as core capabilities and the right ones to get from the outside. I think that's where we spend most of our time making those decisions. But there's no doubt about the fact that you need an API that's ready for this. You need an MCP if you want to have sort of like the real integration from agent to agent. And you need to make sure that you need to make sure that you do it in the right way, and you need to make sure that you only like disclosing or sharing the information that you'd like to be shared. And those things are the boring things to consider when we're talking about AI and when we're talking about machine learning and slightly older technologies. You need to make sure you're in control of what you're doing and not ending up with your whole data set being available to everybody, or wrong decision making that will impact your business. And we've already seen a lot of regulation around the decision making part of things. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see more tightening on that over the coming years. But Elliot, I'm interested to hear where your head is at.
Well, first I just have to say, I mean, travel and IPMI insurance platforms are normally not boring. So, it's a shame that we're talking about, the boring side of them, because otherwise it's riveting, right?
Yes.
No, I mean, I think, my 2 takeaways here, first of all, I think, we were focusing on, you hear about, RAS, reliability, availability, scalability. I mean, we were focusing on those things before it was maybe cool to do so, right? So I think that's very much ingrained in our ethos, is to focus on stability and scalability. And I think now that we've entered this new era, the post AI era, having that as our foundation and having it ingrained into our decision making is going to avoid, I think a lot of potential risk in how the platform evolves. And I think, the other thing is from a market standpoint, IPMI is going to evolve. I mean, it naturally, based on the type of product that it is, it's much more prescriptive than it is sort of reactive, right? It is much more focused on, a high frequency, low severity, predicting someone's health outcomes based on their overall lifestyle. And we're seeing underwriters start to incentivize, policyholders for good health patterns. It's a little bit of like this usage-based concept that's entering into the personal health side of things. And Lloyd, I'm sure your wife's probably seeing it in the PMI side as well, right? Where there's this concept of being much more prescriptive than handling things on the underwriting side as opposed to handling things at time of claim. And so I think from our platform standpoint, I think there is going to be a more heavy emphasis on that side of the fence. And that's where having the resilient API that we have, as you mentioned, is so critical, because you don't really know what the value chain is going to look like in 3 or 5 years. And there's going to be innovation that's going to happen. And more so, there's going to be solutions that are going to be actuarially validated. And I think that's part of insurance innovation that sometimes gets neglected, is that great ideas eventually need to be validated by actuaries. And it takes time to collect data to be able to justify those things. So unless you're talking about something that doesn't affect the bottom line, which is not going to yield much investment dollars, right? The things that are actually going to move the needle or disrupt in insurance take time to be implemented, because actuaries need to be able to justify the outcomes, right? And so we don't know what those things are going to be in 3 to 5 years, but we as a core platform provider need to be flexible and need to be well positioned to be able to partner when those opportunities do bear fruit in the market. So that's kind of my take on it from a market standpoint. And Lloyd, I think we're doing the same thing on the ICE platform side as well, right? It's in building that sort of that stable and scalable core. Casper, you did say, I think you did mention the word orchestrator. Do you want to take 2 seconds just to talk about, our theory on, orchestrating an ecosystem and what's coming down in the immediate future on that front from a product standpoint?
Sure. I can do that. I think at some point fairly early on, we recognized the need for orchestration, and that is the AI component of any workflow and any AI enhancements that we're going to either provide ourselves or have third parties provide, to have that funnel through a platform where it can be put into a numbered line, and we'll know at this point in time, this is when we trigger this effect that'll have a cascading set of actions to it. We identified that there's tons of opportunity out there in terms of connecting, and you need reassurance that what you're connecting to and how you're dealing with that and how that is affecting your platform and your data is done in a safe way and in a coordinated way. So this layer of the platform was added to the platform. So instead of having the integrations going straight to the straight to the platform, we actually go through this layer. They'll make sure that we govern the transactions and the calls that's being made, and we can put it into schedule, or we can put it into a more complex workflow. This also includes us being able to create brand new workflows that perhaps not is calling any analytics features out there, but it's built via agents. So we now have chatting capabilities where we can explain to the orchestrator what are we trying to accomplish, and our own agents will help us set up that workflow inside the application. And the reason for doing this is, well, there are a multitude of them, but I think the biggest one is to empower our customers to be in control of how their platforms are working, how they're functioning, and how they're catering for specific scenarios. And then to build out complex scenarios well, I guess being able to slice existing scenarios into more precise scenarios, if that makes sense, because it's easier now to build out these complex ways of working with human in the loop perspectives, but also having the agents do a lot of work for you or third parties, and then you can separate into many different workflows. Whereas in the past, that will become quite cumbersome to deal with. So overall, the idea is that we need something that we can trust, something that is secure, something that can be monitored, so we know what's going on in this space.
Yeah, so
it's a big implementation, right? So it's difficult just to do the 2-minute version of it, but essentially that is the need that we see, and the solution to that would be what we call the orchestrator.
Yeah, and this is where each of our respective roles come into play, because you're supposed to give the full technical explanation, and I'm supposed to give the 2-minute summary. But I mean, the gist of it, right, is we've now created a platform that gives our customers the ability to seamlessly integrate their entire tech stack, their entire software landscape, and to be able to build cross-platform workflows, cross-platform agentic capabilities with the ability to govern and the ability to create that reliability, framework, that resiliency framework around it, right? So they can define the rules of engagement. They can define from a business user standpoint how systems should interact with each other, all through this orchestrator platform. So it's a very exciting next evolution that we're moving into.
Yeah, you're right. It's one of those situations where you come up with something that is surely and truly a Swiss Army knife, as what we thought we were going to do with it a week ago is well, it's not completely changed this week, right? But we see more ways it can be utilized and how it can be integrated across different platforms, across different customers, and the features that it might hold is really interesting. But right now is also the time to focus, and it goes for us as a vendor, also goes for all of our customers and anybody in the market. We need to focus on what's important and what is actually adding value, and not just all the things you can do, because anybody can sit down with their agent and wipe code something that looks as something that might work, and it's great for prototyping. We've found that we really need to make sure that what we're doing is what strategically makes sense and what is being requested in the market. Otherwise, we just come up with new features that needs to be maintained for the next 20 years and that might not actually have a big adoption in the market. So you need to be focused. I think that's one of the learnings we've had as well. You didn't ask about learnings, but that's a learning that I've taken with me in this new era of doing software development.
Yeah. Well said, Casper. Well, listen, you've been very gracious with your time. So we're going to wrap things up now. Casper, you spend, a good majority of your day or a good chunk of your day predicting, what the future is going to look like and how we need to be positioned for it. So I'm going to put you on the spot. I want you to predict the outcome of tonight's match and then the eventual outcome of the World Cup. I know it's a sore spot. I know you've boycotted this year's World Cup because your dear Denmark is not in it, but let's have some fun. What's the score of tonight's game and then what's the eventual outcome here?
Well, so just for me not to look completely silly, Argentina against England tonight, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I see nodding, and I have no other option to say that England's going to win. It's going to be 2-1. I feel strongly about 2-1.
Love this guy. Love this guy.
Yeah, and then do you think they pull through against Spain then in the finals?
I'll be in Spain at that point in time, so
all right. Well, thanks very much, everyone. That was a great episode. All right, Casper, great chatting with you. I think we have another meeting in 15 minutes, so I'll see you very soon.
Thanks, guys.
Take care, guys. All right, until next time.
You.
Yeah.